This is our panel today. I'm gonna let them introduce themselves one at a time, but let's take this time serious because you're gonna get some of the experiences to the question that you may be wondering about. So, turn it over.
Awesome. Is it on? Okay, we might have to use that one. Okay, sorry. Hey guys, my name is Nathan. This is my fiance, Morgan.
Woo!
Oh.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Nick. We are Nick and Jessica Johnson. We met 15 years ago. We've been married 7 years, and we're excited to be here with you guys.
Woo! Got a fan club.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, so yeah, if you are new here tonight, we have been in the middle of our relationship series called Wholehearted, and tonight we're closing it out with a panel. And so we're just gonna ask some questions that you guys submitted, but I would just love, before we get into their questions, would you just share a little bit, each of you, can pass off the mic or whatever, but tell us about you guys, about your dating journey, whatever you want to share about your love story. We'd love to get to know you a little bit before we start.
All right, I was always ready to talk, so I was already jumping into it. But yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. First, I want to commend Nathan on beautiful worship. That was absolutely wonderful, so thank you for setting the spirit. So we are, like I said, we met about 15 years ago through mutual friends, and we had a prolonged dating experience, and to say the least, I'm sure she would say it lingered. We were like together in that season where all your friends are getting married, and like you're attending a bunch of weddings together, and everyone's like, "You're next. When's the big date?" and all those things. All the pressure was present, which. What was interesting, or what most find interesting about us, is that we were actually engaged twice. That first time, with all the pressure and all the doing it our own way and walking in our own ways, led to a lot of pain and absolute destruction. And I'm not talking like this little on again, off again boyfriend. We were apart for 2, maybe 3 full years, had whole relationships in between, grew apart, and both, I think, found our way to the Lord. I know that when we came together, that is what had changed. I know that we kind of rekindled around summer of 2018. We're both saved that spring of 2018, and we're married in summer of 2019. And he's been blessing us ever since. So.
Well, me and Morgan met our freshman year at Dallas Baptist. We met through a mutual friend at school, and have been dating for about 2.5 years now, engaged for almost 3 weeks. So, yeah, pretty new to that. But yes, we met, became friends, ran in a similar friend group, and then eventually I asked her on a date. And then it all went from there, and we've been dating for a while now. So,
Love it. Okay, let's dive right into all these fun questions. So, okay, dating and engagement and marriage is a confusing stage of life for a lot of us. So we're just trying to figure out God-centered relationships. What does that look like? So that was kind of a big theme in a lot of our questions was, okay, what does it actually look like to keep Christ at the center of your relationship, whether it's dating, engagement, marriage? So if you guys can share a little bit, what does it practically look like to put Christ at the center of your relationship?
Go ahead. Okay. Yeah, I think that there's so many ways to answer this, but I think in the same way of like our Christian walk of the goal is to like involve the Lord in everything that we do and consider what he would desire for us in our lives. And I think the same thing goes for relationships, considering what the Lord would desire in your relationship overall and also like in the little things. And I think that there different ways to do that, obviously in different seasons of life. But I think overall is just considering what he would desire, and also just what he thinks of you and what he thinks of your partner, and that affects like how you treat them. And I think overall just like letting his spirit inform everything that you do and everything that you say. So
we joke all the time that we have like Nick and Jess 1.0, Nick and Jess 2.0. And Nick and Jess 1.0 were not keeping Christ in our center of our relationship. So, you know, if you are in the 1.0 stage of your relationship, you can certainly lean on us for that. But 2.0, we actually, when we got back together, it was because all of our friends were the same, and we needed to figure out a way to keep our friendship alive. And we started going to church together. That was number one. That seems like a really easy place to start. It's just making sure that you have a shared faith community who's pouring into your relationship. I think it really helps keep you accountable as well. We also made a mutual agreement that we would move towards purity, which was very different than the 1.0 part of our relationship, and I think that's really important. So shared values. We also spent time together having fun, and I think that's a lot of it too, right? Is like building that friendship that is going to help you have, all of the, for women, like learning to respect the person that you're with and allowing them to lead you in a different way. Like you have to be able to know each other before you can do that. So I think practically dating, it looks a whole lot like having fun, having boundaries, and also having your own separate life as well. We were independently doing things to foster community, keeping each other accountable in scripture. And I feel like as a married couple, we're a lot better at that than we were as a dating couple. But I mean, that's just, I would say on a practical level, that's what it looked like.
Yeah, I think that certainly what it looks like, and if you ask me, like over the last 7 years, what keeping God center, and only 2.0, I'm not considering 1.0, that was a mess. 2.0, keeping God at the center for 7 years has been a process of refinement. It has been abounding with grace and mercy and finding opportunities to improve by oftentimes the hard way. But what I think is really, we've come into our own, is really understanding our own individual rules, or roles, our unity as one flesh, and how that means that we have to codepend and lean on one another, and use each other's spiritual gifts for the betterment of the household, and really so that his name be glorified.
Okay, I'm hearing a lot of like boundaries type language, and that was another big question. Was something that Max shared, I think last week, was about not just physical boundaries, but emotional and spiritual boundaries. And so I'll start with spiritual boundaries, because a specific question was, should I be reading my Bible with my boyfriend or girlfriend, or in prayer, or like what does that look like, pursuing God together with healthy boundaries? What would you say?
That's a layup. Nathan, you want that?
Yeah, I would say within dating and even engagement, you have to look at it from the perspective of yourself, your personal relationship with Jesus. We see in the Bible, it says like when you get married, like the two become one flesh. And at that point in time, then I would say it's probably more healthy to do some of those spiritually things together. But when you are separate, when you are dating and you are not yet married, you are not yet one in the eyes of the Lord. And so while it is good to talk about spiritual things, while it can even be okay to necessarily like read your Bible together, for us at least, like we would say that we want to make sure that our personal relationship with the Lord is just that. So that way we don't jump into and break a spiritual boundary that the Lord has set aside for people that are married and are one in his eyes. And so.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think that, making sure that you are aligned. And I absolutely believe that, especially for many of you guys in the dating or engagement stage, working on yourself and refining and making sure that you are indeed walking with the Lord and in his path and in that sacrificial way so that you can become more and glorify him more, that it is essential that you work on yourself prior to the working together. But I will say, absolutely, read that book together. Read his book together.
I think one more thing too is like it's actually not that different than what the walk looks like with Christ, like outside of a relationship, right? It's like if you are a baby Christian, you need to be in the Word. You need to have community around you, helping you grow your faith. We both grew up in the church, but we didn't. We were both grew up Catholic, and it was very much very cultural, the lifestyle, like our families. It was just sort of what was expected. But neither one of us, I would say, had a personal relationship with Jesus until 2018. And I remember the church that we were both baptized in, they, right after we were baptized, what was it called? What was it called, the class that we went through? Discipleship 101. Discipleship 101, yeah. And so it was this long course that we went through every single week we were there. And so we both did that independently. And then it just kind of kept going from there. It's like we had built a community who was constantly around us. So by the time that we got married, the community that we needed to help foster our baby marriage was also already there. So I think that's the other reason it's so important to make sure that you have your own individual walk with Christ, because you're going to need those people too as you are getting into a marriage.
Yeah, I think also I think spiritual boundaries can be a pretty confusing thing of just okay, it's not like black and white. It's really just I think a good rule of thumb is if our Bible reading together becomes my only Bible reading, then that's a problem. Or if I don't if I'm not discerning things, accessing the Holy Spirit that dwells within me, and I'm only reliant on the same Holy Spirit that is giving discernment to him, then I'm doing it wrong. And so, because the Lord desires to speak to me individually, just as he desires to speak to him individually. And so if spiritual practices are coming dependent on that person and the amount of times that you do them, or even just the quality of your time with the Lord, I think that that's your red flag of, okay, I am crossing this spiritual line where my spiritual life only is based on this relationship instead of based on my relationship with the Lord.
Love it. Tino, feel free to chime in if you want. Okay, great. Not yet. Okay. Okay, so moving to emotional boundaries. There was a question about, how can I tell if I'm being more emotionally intimate or emotionally dependent with my partner rather than God? What would you say to that regarding emotional boundaries?
So I think one thing you can think about is when you have a conflict, if your very first response is to say, I'm getting out of this, right? Versus pausing and really I would be lying if I said every single time that we have a conflict, I pause and go to the Lord, right? But, I think that so many people are so quick to have a conflict and they're out of there, right? There is a requirement for wrestling and forgiveness. And that's not to say, if you're in a relationship that's abusive, that's a little different, right? But in a healthy relationship, you're going to have tension, you're going to have conflict. And if you allow something like that to just absolutely drive you to a decision in the moment, I think that's maybe a point of thinking through your emotional maturity there. I think also, really making sure that you have the ability to self-reflect and have self-awareness. The Lord humbles us daily. And I think that if you are really leaning into Christ, you're going to be able to pause and really view your role in something versus it always being the other person. So I think that kind of your role in conflict and how you deal with conflict can be a great thermometer for you there, one way.
Yeah, I think it's really easy when you're emotionally dependent on someone for your emotions to go wherever theirs go. And so I think there's a difference between being compassionate and empathetic and like wanting to put yourself in someone else's shoes. There's a line to walk with that, and then also like remaining and abiding in the Lord and letting Him guide your emotions and letting His truth guide your emotions. And obviously there are going to be times where we're not thinking about the truth. Like we're just thinking about the emotions that we're having and they're overwhelming. And then hopefully eventually we'd get to the point where we're reading truth and we're believing it. But I think that if, your partner is having a bad day and all of a sudden you're just like, why am I having a bad day? But like my day has been so good. It's like being like you said, like kind of recognizing those emotions in that moment of being like, okay, my emotions right now are dependent on what they're feeling. And so that just shows that like I am literally being dependent on what they're feeling. And the problem is like even in friendship relationships, like any relationship with a human, if you're dependent on their emotions, there's never going to be consistency. Even if we're dependent on our own emotions, there's never going to be consistency. But when we're dependent on the Lord and His truth, even though we're human and our emotions will, pivot, like we have something to be grounded in. And so if we're grounded in our partner's emotions, we're going to be all over the place. But if we're grounded in what the Lord's truth is, then we will be rooted in that. And I think that that's like a big difference there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's wonderful. I wanted to just add on a separate point. I was thinking back to the dating life. One of the things that I think really worked for us in 2.0 that didn't in 1.0 was keeping emotional boundaries for ourselves. Think of it as bridling passion, right? You don't want to get out ahead of where God says this relationship is. People, there's a lot of eagerness in this room, a lot of eagerness at this age of this stage of young adulthood. And so just making sure that you're checking in with the Lord. If you're ever more excited about, that relationship than you are about your relationship with the Lord, you might have crossed an emotional boundary. You may be headed for trouble. So that's just something I want to add.
That's good.
Yeah, I would also say we know that the joy of the Lord is our strength in our entire lives, right? And so I know for some, there might be this pressure or this feeling like when I'm with my boyfriend or my girlfriend or my fiance or whatever that might look like, man, life is great. But then whenever they leave and I have to go back, to where I live or I have to go back to my group of friends, like there's some sort of like emotion absence there to where like the joy that you have when you're with that person is like the opposite when you're not with them. And we know that the Lord has given us that joy throughout our entire lives. And so I think for me in my life, and I've just seen this play out in a couple different ways, man, that group of friends that you have, whether that's like your guys or your girls, they're usually a pretty good tell of like, hey, you've been kind of absent recently. And maybe that's just a little bit of a tell sign like, hey, like emotionally, maybe you're checking out and maybe you're crossing a boundary. And you're putting a little bit more of your dependence in your life in the hands of this person who should not hold that at that point in time. And so, yeah.
Love it. I would add to that too, speaking from a young adult, we live in an age where it's really common in dating to act like you're married before you're married in your relationship. And so speaking from experience, it's so easy to make your boyfriend or your girlfriend like your person. You share everything with, if you're having a good day, share everything. Having a hard day, share everything. And it's like to the point where your community is pointless. There's no point for accountability because you're sharing everything with your person. And I would say even in marriage, like there's there's more reason to do that because like yes, they are like you are made one flesh with them, but even then, like you still need accountability with your guys and your girls. Like your husband and your wife can't even be your person, and so that would be a check for myself. Is like, am I making my significant other everything in my life, or are they, along with my community? And so doing relationship in community is really, really valuable. So love it. All right, let's dive in. Let's talk about physical boundaries. What does that look like? How have you, you don't have to share in detail, but just like, what, let's get in the nitty gritty. What would you say about physical boundaries? How do you, according to God's word, how do you maintain healthy physical boundaries? What would you suggest? What would you encourage about those?
I'll tell you what, I have no room to talk, so I'm not going to try to portray in a way that is not authentic. But what I will tell you is something I shared in my small group last week. Shout out to the green group. Thank you guys for all the love. Appreciate that. Where the counterfeit exists, the authentic is worthy. And once you buy that counterfeit, you're stuck with it. And you've made a decision for your relationship to go a different way, a way that was not sanctioned by the Lord. And I want you to know, I don't know, I can't speak on it, where that takes for your individual relationship. But I can tell you, and if you guys want to hear, there is a price to be paid. 1.0 led to deep, deep destruction and darkness, death, and a lot of hurt on both sides, and even surrounding us in our community and culture. So I can't speak on how you do it, but I'll tell you why you do it.
Yeah. I think first, practically, like this is something that almost, if not every couple, will struggle with, or at least face in some sort of way. It is something that is hard, and so you have to be intentional to run from it. If I could speak directly to the guys, I feel like there are 3 different categories in a relationship where boundaries can be set. We've already talked about the first 2: spiritually, emotionally, physically. And then the truth just is that like you guys, like us guys, like physical is going to be the one that we tend to struggle with the most. And so it's going to be easy for us and maybe feel natural, or maybe feel like what the Lord is like, he's made me this way. And that's your flesh talking to you. And so in those moments, you have to flee your flesh. And so for us, practically, that looks like, hey, let's not even put ourselves in these situations because we know that our flesh is weak. But if we don't even go to step 1, then how can we get to step 5, like down the road? And so I would say practically, like that's one way to look at it, but also to look at it like as like the Lord has made, like he's made Morgan in his image, he's made me in his image, he's made all of you and your significant other in his image. And because of that, like he's given them like worth that like no one else could give them. And so when you look at them in a way that like is fleshly, you're like taking that worth and you're saying like that's not necessarily true in this moment, and like I'm choosing to not view you in that way. And so for us, like we practically just have to look in the face of your significant other. That is the child of God, and He has made them in His image. And I'm not going to defame that. I'm not going to take that and twist it into what the world or even my fleshly desires tell me is like right or natural.
So I was kind of waiting for us to get through all 3 of them, just so you know, because the truth be told, they all interconnect. Mm-hmm. There's no way to escape it. Even if you think you're strong in one area, you're going to pay for it in another area. So you got to understand that, just by show of hands, be honest. How many to you guys, raise your hand if you think boundary is a bad word? Like you feel like it's like stopping you from doing something and you feel like it's like jail or something. I got one hand.
One honest person.
Okay, I got it.
There we go.
All right. So you gotta understand what boundaries are. Boundaries are, depending on what side of the fence you're on, boundaries are to protect or deflect. Right? There was a young lady when I was going to school that was that had a faith like no tomorrow. I remember her to this day because her faith was so solid. She made a decision that she was going to get married one time and she was going to date her husband. That was going to be her husband. And what the decision she made to put a boundary around that, it protected her heart and protected what was spiritual, what was heavenly, and it deflected what was earthly and what was fleshly.
Yes, sir.
So if we understand what these boundaries allow us to actually stay in a place where we are safe. It's not, so all of a sudden you cross that road and you're physical. Now everything from that point, you begin to question, like, does he love me? All these doubts come in because you woke up something that was never meant to be awakened until the right time. So if you understand this, it's for you to protect what is sacred. You shouldn't, like when you get married, you don't want your wife to walk out in front of a whole bunch of guys and them like check out crazy, right? You try to protect that, right? That's it. The greatest thing you can do, and I'm just gonna sound crazy, when you're dating, protect the person you're dating from you.
That's good. That's good.
Anything else?
I will also say, I feel like oftentimes when you're like looking at a situation, hold on, I lost my thought.
I'll say something while he's trying to remember.
Bring it back.
I would just also like speak to like the girls in the room of the do you remember? Of the discouragement that you might feel of just like the reality that some of you have probably been like hurt in a lot of ways in this area, and like same for the guys too. Like I know that that's a reality. But I would just encourage y'all of like, it's not worth settling in this area, and it's not worth like lowering your standards because you feel like it's not realistic. Because reality is like if it's not realistic to our culture, then like that's if it reaches to a point where there's literally no man that exists that will like respect you in that way, then it's still not worth it. Cause like the Lord has set a specific design, and like you would rather walk in singleness and honor him than walk in a relationship that doesn't. Yeah. And so I think but that's really easy to forget, especially like in Christian dating culture where people want to get married young, and not saying that that's a bad thing. Obviously it's not. But like, I just think like there's so much pressure around it, and that should never cause either like girls out there or guys out there to settle in any of the departments, but especially like physically in this culture that we live in. Like continue to set your standards to where the Lord calls them to be.
Okay, I remembered it. So, guys, like I feel like, well, not even I feel, I know that the Lord has called us to lead in our relationships. And oftentimes in a dating relationship, you're looking to where can I lead? And so like we just talked about, there's physical, emotional, spiritual. Spiritually, like when you are dating, it is not your responsibility to lead her. Because she has her personal relationship. Y'all are not one in the eyes of the Lord. Therefore, it's not your responsibility. Emotionally, as much as you can try, it is also not your responsibility to control her emotions. She's going to think the way she thinks, and she should, because y'all are not together. Y'all are not one in the eyes of the Lord. But physically is the one way that you can lead her while y'all are dating before marriage, because you have the opportunity to say, no, like we are not going to do this. I'm not going to put myself in a situation, and I'm going to choose to honor you and lead you in this way as we lead up towards marriage, where then the other two sectors are kind of unlocked as far as leadership goes.
All right, I was trying really hard to think of something useful to you guys, so forgive me. But two quick things. One, I think that I wanted to echo what Nathan said, and the appropriate reaction to sin is to flee from it. And I think that, you know, in this day and age, and especially I've read some of the stories about young people and what they do to preserve what they think of as purity, and all the games that they play and whatnot, when in actuality, the appropriate reaction is to run as far as you possibly can. And so to think of sin as a prowling lion and react accordingly. And then one of the pieces that I think was earlier in this series was to let your relationship grow in the light. I think that is spot on. That is brilliant advice, because it is really hard to be crossing boundaries with everybody looking at you like that. And so I just think that let your relationship grow in the night, or grow in the light, and not the night. That was 1.0, y'all. This is forgive me again.
That's so good. Okay, so you guys read my mind. A lot of questions related to like leadership and the initial pursuit of relationships. That's where a lot of us in this room are wanting, desiring relationship. And so kind of to highlight on the girl side, like we talk about men are supposed to lead in the relationship, right? They're supposed to lead and pursue and initiate. And, we talk a lot about, as Christ loved the church, he gives it. So there's a lot of like pressure on like guys to lead. But I think some of the women in the room, frankly, are like, what if they're not leading? Or what if they're not pursuing? Like, what is my role as a woman if I'm not necessarily supposed to be the one leading and pursuing? Like, how do I still or like show that I'm interested in a guy and I don't want to just pretend, So what would you guys say to that as a woman desiring a relationship, but is maybe not seeing a lot of initiative?
I am very pro, I don't think that there's any problem in expressing your feelings to a guy as a girl. I think that there's a difference between that and pursuing. And so I did not ask Nathan on our first date. But I did give him a little hint, or like hints that I would be open to that. And I think that is like exactly like what is kind of like our role in it, of just like, it's okay to, obviously you don't want to be like, crazy about it, like in their face and like, why aren't you asking me on a date? Like dropping like subtle hints. But I think like even just voicing like, hey, I am interested in you. Like I've seen your character and I'm interested in you, and I'd be interested in like, getting to know you more. Like I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I actually think that we have a friend that like they just went through this exact thing of, she like rejected him like a year ago. And at that point, he did not feel like safe to like kind of put himself out there again. And so she took the initiative to say like, hey, I am interested in you because I've seen your character and I've seen your growth, and I am interested in getting to know you more. And then he asked her out on a date after that, after they both have been praying about it, and like has continued to pursue her since then. And so I think like, obviously there's a balance, but I don't think there's anything wrong with making your feelings known.
I feel like I have a little bit of a unique perspective on this because I am an occupational therapist. That's what I do for a living. And so I work with a lot of people, young adults, teenagers, who are neurodivergent. And I hear a lot from my clients that it is really difficult sometimes to read subtle cues. And so I agree that it is okay to say what you think, right? Like some people some people aren't catching subtle cues, right? But there's a difference between sharing what you're feeling and even being very concrete about it than like planning the date, right? There's a difference there. And so I think that too, like, and also like if you're in a friendship with someone for a while, you're probably going to know how to communicate with that person. So that would also help, is like if there's somebody that you're interested in, get to know them. Like even just taking I think it would be okay to spend time near them, around them, get to know the people who know them as well. And then maybe if it is somebody who is just really not getting the hint, or is just really not joining you in a walk, is that really somebody who is capable of leading your marriage and raising children with you, those kinds of things. Like maybe that is a big red flag that that's not the right person for you. So I think early on, you can probably lean into some of your intuition about those things too.
That's good.
So I'm going to provide a different perspective just because I understand there's two types or even more type of people in the room. I don't think it's just going to every guy or every girl and say, I'm interested in you. Okay?
Sure.
That's not
Sure
her
that
advice.
I'm gonna check all the boxes. Right? I think there has to be something that's been driven in you. Like, the reason why more than you want to have interest in it is because something about the God in him is calling in something. Right? It shouldn't be risky. Do y'all understand the difference in that? It shouldn't be like you're gambling when you ask them out. There should be something bona fide there that you are holding on to or seeing that causes you to be more than an attraction, but a godly attraction.
Yep.
Right? Because you can be attracted and interested in any Tom, Dick, or Harry that walk out there. Right? So the significance in that is that you should feel it's like if it's just easy for you to go just ask anybody out, I'm gonna tell you not to ask anybody out. So I just want to make sure I was clear on that because it can be I thought I could have, or we would have, we almost. No, if you're not feeling like, if you go ask someone out and you mean it and it's in your heart, and they tell you no, that shouldn't change your friendship, that shouldn't change how you see the Lord, because you planned that with the Lord. I just want to make sure that's clear.
I just have to share a personal thing. So I told Max I love you first. And that was like a big thing, you know, and it's like, that didn't make him feel less like a man. It was because I felt comfortable and confident enough that it was safe. And so I think that's where it's like leadership from the man is more of like setting the tone, you know, for your relationship rather than like they do everything first. Like that's where I think we compartmentalize it a little bit more than I think it's supposed to be. It's more of a heart posture and, you know, yeah, like setting the tone, setting the temperature of where we're going, you know, communication. But yeah, say what you think. I love that. Say what you're feeling. Okay, let's talk some more. Okay, so let's talk about, like, go back to the beginning of y'all's relationship. How did you know this was the person you wanted to marry? What does it look like to process that way? How do you know?
I feel like for me, kind of in the way that they term their like 1.0 relationship, I experienced something similar when I was in high school with someone else. And so I knew what it wasn't going to look like. And so when me and Morgan began to start dating, like the first thing that I fell in love with was like her heart for the Lord. And so her desire to like keep the Lord in the middle of our relationship was something that was new to me. And so it immediately stuck out as like, this is what like a relationship that honors the Lord looks like. And so as we continued dating and like things didn't necessarily change, and that's not to say that we've been perfect because we've struggled and we're imperfect people, but like seeing the way that she has a heart for the Lord more than she loves me, you know, as much as like I want her to love me, like I'm glad that she loves the Lord more and I can tell that. And so that was the thing that like was clear to me is like she is the one that like I'm going to marry. So
That's awesome. I wish I could say the same.
Like, 1.0, let's go.
Right. So, okay. So, I want you to know that Jessica is an integral and probably the first domino in the story of my testimony, the story of my redemption by God, and He made it painfully obvious. It was so readily apparent that this was the person for me, and he gave us a crucible, a trial by fire over years of figuring that out. And by the time I came back, I mean, I was a different man. And I will say, you know, we've talked about this intimately, and I've spoken with my small group a little bit about it. Like, I wasn't the man that I needed to be in the first one. It wasn't like it wasn't good or that we didn't vibe or have good chemistry. We had all that. That was in spades. what happened was the storm came and our house was built on sand. And I wasn't the person that I needed to be. I couldn't lead a home. I wasn't ready to be that man for her. And so I needed to be that person, and the woman stepped forward and took her role. So, I'm so thankful.
Before, like after Nathan and I had a conversation of like, we'd been friends for like two or 3 months at this point, and then hung out a lot like in the same friend group. And then we had a conversation one day of like, okay, we have feelings for each other. And then we had another conversation of what do we do about these feelings that we have for each other. And I told him like, I don't want to date someone unless like they have marriage in mind, like unless marriage is the end goal, because my relationships in high school were not that way. Like I don't even think I had marriage in mind. Like I was just dating them because that felt like the thing to do in high school. And so when I told him that, I fully expected him to be like, oh, never mind. Like, I don't want this. That's not what I want. And when I said like, I don't want to date anyone unless it's headed towards marriage, he's like, oh yeah, me too. Like that's exactly my goal. And I was like really surprised by that, because that's just not what I had experienced in the past. And so I think like being clear about both of your goals in the relationship, even if like Nathan and I didn't end up at this point that we would have still been dating for the purpose of marriage. And so we would have acted like we were dating for the purpose of marriage. And then like, even if we didn't end up here, we would have like treated our relationship with like an honor of the Lord, like to the Lord. And we would have learned from that and grown from it. But I think just knowing that you both have the common goal of marriage in mind seems like such a like elementary and like bottom like tier thing of like, yeah, well, of course everyone in the church has marriage in mind, but some people don't. Like some people don't have that in mind. And so I think just making that clear and actually saying that out loud and communicating that, so that when you or your partner does something that doesn't look marriage minded, then you can call that out and say like, what is this and where did it come from and how can we change it?
I think for me, I mean, when you get engaged to somebody twice, I feel like God's made it pretty obvious that's your person. So I don't know that there's like a tangible thing. I really agree with pretty much everything he said. It was just like, all of those pieces were there, but we were not. I feel like we were moving towards a wedding versus the marriage. You know, even our first engagement was all about the ring and the proposal and the show. Right. The second time, he literally proposed with a donut. And I picked out my own ring. Like totally different, right? So like, you know, I feel like literally everything about 2.0 is so different. And that's the one that led to the marriage and the life we have today, which was ultimately what I always wanted. I never wanted 1.0, right? But that's what happens whenever you decide to live together before you're married and give all of those husband privileges whenever you're not there. And be with somebody who their end goal was not marriage. I mean, I was like, you know, we didn't get married till I was like, what, 31? And you were, yeah. And so like, you know, for me, when we got engaged the first time when I was 26, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, I'm so old, you know? And then like life is just so different. And we had a child at 34, right? And we still desire to have more. And it's just the life is so different than what I had pictured. But it's like when I really think back on those times where I was pushing my own timeline, pushing and pushing, it just really led to so much hurt. And so, you know, I think for me, like who Nick is, and I tell, you know, anybody who knows us well knows that I have like a living, breathing testimony of God's redemptive love living in my house. Like I feel like I'm the most blessed woman ever. because I literally think he gets better every single year. But I think that's like when you, like guys in the room, like it's very attractive to women whenever you are living the life that Christ calls you to live. It's very attractive. And so, somebody's clapping. So, I mean, like, I think there's so much about what Nick was choosing to do with his life that just drew me to him, that I just didn't want to be with anybody else.
I think for myself, the experience of dating the wrong person and taking that chance and understanding that, like, dating the wrong person is almost like suicide. It kills you emotionally, physically, spiritually. That when you understand and you're so in tune with what God is doing in your life, it's easier to understand what is a distraction versus an attraction. And so when you date God hard, it's very hard to settle because you're coming from a place of just everything is very peaceful. And you're not struggling with trying to figure out if this is the right person. You're actually enjoying it more. It's easier to take those steps. And so I say this because there is a point when you take the time to really date the Lord before you become emotional. See, we just think we become emotional when we meet somebody. We actually you can start dating and think about dating emotionally.
Yep.
And once you do that, it becomes blind, because I always say emotions are good for giving hugs and cursing people out, but bad drivers. Right? And so you understand that once you come in this place and you start to date someone, you're just waking up the next day and taking the next day and enjoying it. That's what I did with my boo.
Get up here, Esmer. All right, 2 more questions because we're running out of time. So if your question didn't get answered, feel free, come and talk to them afterwards. But Nick, you mentioned when the storms come, and I don't want to miss this because it's so crucial for relationships. What does it look like to navigate conflict? Because it's inevitable in relationships. What do you guys do? What is something you would encourage us when conflict comes?
Calm down. Everyone, no, I will say, listen, so I've been trying to work, I read a book by John Mark Comer, and I really am trying to develop his spiritual practices. And I know it sounds like it, people, we get angry, we get upset. And first, I think, when you are leading your household or your relationship or being the Godhead of that relationship that he calls you to be, you're very slow to anger. You're abounding in mercy and grace. And so, the first thing you need to do is check your own alignment, check your own oil, see what's going on here. Mm-hmm. And whatever that means, whether that means take a minute to withdraw, which is one of the practices we see Jesus doing very frequently, to pray and be alone with the Father, to think and reflect, to find ways to reconnect with him and with who we really are. I think taking yourself out of the moment. I think when we get caught up, we talked about this, Tino, one time, that you're blending the temporal and the eternal. When you're caught up in the moment and the fighting over things, dishes or disagreement, whatever your disagreements may be, you're letting the muck and the mire of the fleshly world draw you down from what God has called holy and good and sanctioned. And it's not the place where you want to be. And so I think that really you can only control yourself so much, because if you are taking the correct heart posture, it's not like you're being like, well, what about you? Or, it's not. I think that one of the things that in thinking about this was the Sermon on the Mount and taking Jesus's approach to using the language of a splinter from the eye, a very thin and slight thing from a delicate point on our body, pulling from the eye, while recognizing that there may be splinters, there may be a log in our own eye that we're not seeing properly. And so I would just encourage you in that way.
So I have two things. Did any of you know that Rock Point has a pamphlet on biblical conflict resolution? Because it lives on our refrigerator. That's true. If you walked into our living room, our kitchen today, you would see it on our refrigerator. And so that is something that if you didn't know that it was there, you have access to that. And it is a practical tool that is very helpful in navigating all kinds of conflict. So there's one. We go to an amazing church who offers really practical resources, right? This is also where I think that all of those boundaries that we've been talking about really overlap with day-to-day life. Because if your emotional boundaries, for example, are completely dependent on that other person, I'll just paint you a quick picture. A year ago, Nick had a major health emergency, major, 3 days before we were set to fly to Boston to our son's like life-changing throat surgery. And so you talk about stress. And it, like, the storms do come, and they will, and they once they're through them, another one will come. Like, there is only one thing that is certain in life, and that is that you will face storms, right? And so I think if you are so emotionally dependent on your other person and then the storm hits, you will crumble every time. Because if I had crumbled in that moment, our family would have been in a lot of trouble, right? Because he was not available, and my son needed me, and so did our household, so did our jobs, those kinds of things. And I think that if you are rooted in your faith, if you are rooted in your community, and you have a partnership that is centered in Christ, you can literally get through anything. We've gotten through deaths of parent, a loss of jobs, major life transitions. Name a storm, we've probably gone through it. And some of those we did better than others, but that communication is so key, and that sacrificial love, that there are some seasons where one of the partners will take on, 90% to 10%, or, the other way around. And it's not ever going to be fair 50-50. That's just not how life is.
Yeah, I also think, like we were talking about earlier when it comes to physical boundaries and realizing the image that your significant other has been made in. I think it's the same kind of idea with respecting them in seasons and situations of conflict. Because when I look at her and I see her as a child of God, then that will change the way that I love her. Because while I do love her in a romantic sense, I should also first love her as the Lord has loved her. And so in those moments, when my flesh wants to get upset or maybe argue about something that's novel, I can recenter my brain and realize first who she is and her identity as a child of God. And that alone should be enough to kind of change the way that I approach a conversation or respect her. Second, if dating is supposed to lead up to this idea of marriage, and we know that marriage is a representation of Christ and the church, while there are obvious ways that you are not going to display that in your dating relationship, one of the ways and one of the things that Jesus did for the church is he died on the cross for their sins, and he forgave them, right? He forgives us. And so you do not need to be in a married covenant to display this trait of Jesus that is forgiveness. And so that's something that's oftentimes easier said than done, especially when you're running on emotions. And so like he said, taking a moment to kind of step away, regain your brain, and then go into a logical conversation where you've, one, recognized their worth as a child of God, and then two, recognize that Jesus has forgiven them, and so should you, whether you're dating, engaged, or married, or just friends. So,
yeah, something that I have learned from Nathan, like in our relationship. And it's so simple, but it's so hard. It's just like being quick to give grace. Like, I think that kind of aligns with forgiveness, but in conflict, meeting each other with grace first. And just because you give the person grace doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't mean that what they did was right. I mean, the Lord extends us grace in our sin. And so, but regardless of what the circumstances, just being quick to give grace, because that will change the whole conversation. I am like really quick to being defensive, and I have learned, because of the way that Nathan handles conflict, of being really quick to give grace. I see my own defensiveness because of the way that he gives grace. And so I am like, and it's convicting and it's hard. Like I mean, my dad's a lawyer. Like I live in a very defensive family. So it's hard. Like it's really hard. But when we both go towards conflict resolution with the filter of grace, like the conversation is going to be better, and it's going to be more loving. And so that's my 2 cents.
I'll add, somebody way smarter than me, I don't remember who said it, but there's this phrase that's super catchy that I always remember, is that conflict is an opportunity for discipleship. And what I mean by that is, like, I've seen it in Max and my relationship, that even if, an argument or something is like really rough, like even if it takes a couple of days for us to like process it, get to where we're on the same page, like we realize that we grew stronger together through it. And so it can apply to even friendships, not just dating relationships, but like conflict is an opportunity to grow you more into the image of Christ, and then your relationship grow each other closer together. And so it's actually been really cool to see in marriage that, like, oh wow, even though we had this tiff or whatever, it's like we're actually stronger as a result of that conversation. And so it could even be an encouragement of like, this is good. We need this to grow us and shape us. So
Well, I would like to reiterate what both Nick and Nathan said. I said it this way: it's my fault first. Something about that allows you to have the eyes and the ears to see and hear. Like, that's the hardest thing. When you're mad, you can't see or hear. All you can see is what you feel and what you think. So if you're going to be a peacemaker, you have to be able to come out of yourself for a second and be able to be reasonable about what you could be doing different. At the minute I see where I can do something different, the whole argument is in vain for me, because I'm saying maybe if I would have understood that, I could have avoided this. Right. So.
All right, last question. We're going to end on a fun note. What would you guys say is your favorite way to have fun together as a couple? Or favorite thing to do?
Let's start with the young folks. We got a 4-year-old, y'all. We got a 4-year-old. She runs her own business. I got a day job. Like, this is our fun. Yeah, y'all are looking at it. We stay pretty busy, and definitely, I think, growing together and just being out in the, at the park, enjoying our home, and that. I mean, those are the moments. That's the real stuff, and that's what we love.
Really, sorry, but like even being busy, how do you find the fun though?
Oh, he wants to push back. Okay, all right. Okay, we got a heckler. All right, let's see.
All of this that applies to a lot of us, I think. We have busy lives. We're committed to a lot of things. So how can we find the time in our relationships to have that fun?
Okay, so when you're with, this is like maybe cliche, I don't know. When you're with the right person, you will have fun in the mundane. I mean, that's true, right? It's like, I mean, Nick makes me laugh constantly. And we text almost all day, every day. I mean, we've been married for 7 years, like that's, I mean, I feel like he'll send me a funny GIF or GIF, what is it?
How are you?
Like we watch comedy, we share music. I mean, we have a 4-year-old that's funny, like, we laugh a lot. And when we do get time, I mean, we get babysitters, but that doesn't happen very often, both for financial reasons and because we're busy. But also, like, I think that I did a women's retreat a few years ago that was called Dwell, and there was this awesome book, and I can never remember the name of it, but it was all about the Sabbath and how there are different types of rest. Like, I think it was like 7 different types, and so there's a little quiz in the back, and it talked about the different types of rest. And Nick and I, when you get to know us, we're huge nerds. And one, like, there's different kinds of rest, like creative rest. Some of it, so like on your Sabbath day, it doesn't always have to be physical rest. Like, it's something that you choose to do, or is filling you up, getting you ready to prepare for the work the Lord has for you that next week, right? And so for sometimes that looks like him and I staying up late and we run a business together. And that's fun, y'all. But I mean, it's not fun for everybody. It's fun for us, you know? And so I think when you build your life with someone, you build in natural opportunities for fun. Like, of course, we like to, go ride our bike together or go to the park. But like, you're right, there's not always time to do those things. So I think making sure you find fun in the mundane too is important.
Yeah, I would say for us, surprisingly, we don't have a 4-year-old running around, obviously. But our lives are very busy as well, and we see each other quite a bit. And so for us, it's almost balancing. We work together at DBU, and so like we're even together at work, but like that's a little bit different than like when it's just us hanging out. And so I think a lot of times the fun that we have just comes from the moments of intentionality, where we take like you said, like those little moments and make things fun. Whether that's like 5 minutes, like in between, like we're like a class during the day, or like 10 minutes to sit down and just like be intentional and check up, like, hey, how are you doing? What have you been up to? And like, it's in those moments that like, there's like so much joy of just like, man, like I get to like do life with this person. And like, sure, we might not be like going out and like going to Six Flags and riding roller coasters, or like, doing all these, what like the world might consider fun things. But like truly like just those moments of like intentionality, like going to grab food, like watching a TV show, even just like talking about like our day and like the different things that are going on. Like, I think those things, when you're with like the person that like you love, like that boring thing becomes fun. And so
I want to say when Max and I were dating, and we still do this actually, going to the grocery store was actually a fun thing for us. And it's so silly thinking about it now, but it's like literally just the other day, me, Max, and Levi went to the grocery store and we had a blast. And it was like part of real life, but just being with the people you love is fun. So
I want to answer your question. And I think that laughing easily, playing readily, like ready to hop into it, and most of all, just showing up. It doesn't matter what you're doing. If you just show up and you bring your best into that relationship, into that moment, you're going to have a lot of fun.
So I'm gonna give y'all I'm still learning of this, right? And the reason why I say I'm still learning is because having fun for me is low maintenance. I mean, honestly, in high school, I didn't drink, and people were like, is he drunk? Because I was having fun all the time, right? So for me, my advice is whoever the most sensitive to a subject, kind of let them follow that pursuit. Like, honestly, my wife wants more of that. And so for me, if I'm right here and I see her across the room, I'm happy. That ain't the same for her. It's not that she's not happy to see me, right? But it's kind of like what have you done for me lately, right? But not that bad, right? So, but I'm trying to say, like Christmas in general, it was a bigger deal for her. So I found myself, it don't take all that, so I would bring the mood down a little bit. Where I should actually heighten it to where she is. Because there's areas in my life that I want her to bring it, come up to my standard. Right. So I would follow pursuit of the highest standard in that area, in that relationship. So if some of the funny things that we do, and I can't give it to you because you guys get mad at me, but some of my funnest moments with her is I can say things to her that you can't say to most women. And she's laughing and going right along with it. Right?
she's like, stop talking.
Sometimes more than others.
So
Yeah, I also think like in a similar way, and when Tina was talking, kind of like popped this image in my head of like when you are like looking to pursue like a girl, for guys specifically, like when you're looking to pursue a girl, like you have to be intentional to do that, right? Like you have to make the effort to go to the store and get her flowers. You have to make the effort to like, I don't know, make a reservation or at least come up with an idea of what you're going to do on a date. And that can look like a lot of different things, but you have to be intentional to pursue that. And I think like when you are intentional to pursue her in that way, and when you're intentional to pursue like just like the joy-filled moments as well, then like a lot of that like fun stuff will then become to like just be normal. As you continue to grow in your relationship, then like almost everything that you do becomes fun. And obviously there's going to be moments of sadness and struggle, and there's moments for that, and there's time for that. But the boring things can then become fun. And you as like me as like, I don't know, a senior in high school, like a single guy, what I would have considered fun and like what I would consider fun now are probably two completely different things, because I've learned to have fun with her. So
love it. Yep, prioritize fun. It's good. All right, so that's all we have for the panel tonight. Yes, let's give them a round of applause. Thank you all so much for your experience and authenticity. So we are a little bit later on time, and so we will be breaking out into our small groups, but I did want to say we don't have specific questions. So leaders, let's focus more on just praying for one another. And with that, I think Tino is going to bless us. But before we do that, would one of you pray for us to close us out?
I turned the microphone off. Is it working again?
Yeah, there you go.
Right. Yeah, I'd love to. Father God, I just want to thank you for this gathering. I want to thank you for the hearts in this room. I want to thank you for their lives, and I want you to encourage them. I ask that you please encourage them to know what a good thing they are doing, what a tremendous head start they are giving their lives just by being here and trying to learn more about you and what a relationship with you and with the world around us looks like. And so, Lord, I just ask that you encourage each one of them in their hearts, provide an extra smile, an extra measure of warmth from your countenance onto them to thank them for what they're doing here and for trying to know you better. And Lord, I just ask that in each one of them, as it is aligned with your will, that they may be blessed with a relationship that is God-honoring and life-giving. So Lord, ever wise Father, I just ask that you be with us, and we thank you for your Son. We thank you for his presence amongst the believers, and we ask that we carry each and every one of these hearts in this room safely throughout the rest of this week and on into their lives. In Jesus' holy name, we pray through the power of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.